Everybody might.
Stand by.
Okay.
Stand by.
Yeah.
It's not every morning. You get a major staff upheaval, a Jared and Ivanka sighting, and a Game of Thrones reference all in the same storyline, so brace yourselves. This morning, the Washington Post reports that the White House is being warned winter is coming. That's an actual quote from the piece. New concern among the president's closest allies that he and those around him are not prepared for the legal and political onslaught should the Democrats take over the House, up to and including impeachment, the Post says. More related intrigue at King's Landing. The New York Times reports essentially that Javanka always pays its debts. The president's daughter, Ivanka, and son-in-law Jared Kushner reportedly were none too happy with White House counsel Don McGahn, which might have contributed to the Twitter exclusive where the president announced McGahn was leaving. McGahn did not know that tweet was coming. Don't forget, McGahn has answered some 30 hours of questions from special counsel Robert Mueller's team.
All right, that's a lot to digest. Luckily, we have 3 hours. So as McGahn prepares to exit, there are more signs that Attorney General Jeff Sessions could soon be shown the door as well. Politico reports that the president has spent the last 10 days lobbying Republican senators to also sour on the AG. And there are signs it is working. A few powerful senators seem to be taking the president's side, though, of course, getting rid of Sessions would open a whole new can of worms. We have it all covered. CNN's Athena Jones is live at the White House with more. Hi, Athena.
Good morning, Allison. The president confirming yet another key departure. And we had reported that McGahn would be leaving after the Kavanaugh confirmation fight. Still, the president's announcement via Twitter surprised McGahn. McGahn had not specified the timing of his departure, and he hadn't spoken about it with the president. The news also surprised and upset some Republicans on Capitol Hill. This is a significant departure. It comes after CNN and others have reported that McGahn has become an important witness in the Mueller probe, having sat down for some 30 hours of interviews over a 9-month period with special counsel Robert Mueller's team. And we know that McGahn, who represents the presidency as an institution, not the president himself, didn't give a full debriefing of what he discussed to the president's lawyers. President Trump seemed to acknowledge that yesterday afternoon. Watch.
Any concern about what he said to the Mueller team?
No, not at all. Not at all. I knew he was going also, as you know, I had to approve it. So we didn't claim executive. No, I don't have to be aware. We do everything straight. We do everything by the book.
And one more thing about the reaction to this news on Capitol Hill. McGahn has played a key role in helping the president appoint a long line of conservative judges to the bench, from Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court on down. That is one reason for the negative reaction from folks like Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley to this news. Allison, John.
Okay, Athena, thank you very much. We have a lot to discuss, so let's bring in Errol Lewis, CNN political commentator, Jeff Zeleny, CNN senior White House correspondent, and Jackie Kucinich, CNN political analyst and the Daily Beast Washington bureau chief. Great to see all of you. Okay, so Errol, let's talk about Don McGahn. So what was so interesting is that after the president blindsided him, is the reporting that he announced it on Twitter before he ran it by Don McGahn, and Don McGahn didn't have any date certain that he was planning to leave, but it was sort of like a preemptive breakup, it sounds like.
Right.
That the president had caught wind that Don McGahn wanted to leave, so he decided to kind of do it before he was broken up with.
You can't dump me, I dump you.
That's right.
You can't. You can't quit. You're fired.
Yeah. Are you familiar with that one?
I've read about it.
That dynamic? Okay. So what's interesting is that then we heard from McConnell and we heard from Senator Chuck Grassley. Here's what McConnell said. Don is the most impressive White House counsel during my time in Washington, and I've known them all. His departure from the White House, whenever that may be, would be a big loss for the Trump administration and the country. It was so interesting that Senator McConnell was speaking sort of hypothetically. He started that statement by saying, if this news is true. This wasn't from the media. This was from the president's Twitter account. He doesn't know or trust if that news is true.
That's right. Well, we've seen a lot of back and forth, right? We've seen different policies announced on Twitter and then kind of dialed back. We've seen different administration officials go out and try to make policy and then have it contradicted by the Twitter feed. So it's unclear what's going to happen. And even now, frankly, it's a little bit open-ended. We don't know what's going to happen with the Kavanaugh nomination. We don't know what's going to happen with the election. We don't know if all of this is going to look very, very different come November. I think, though, what the leader, McConnell, is really referring to is that McGahn's influence has really been on sort of central core conservative Republican objectives, getting lots of conservative judges through the process and dealing with deregulation. McGahn himself has said that he wants deregulation to be a big part of his legacy if and when he does leave.
It's really interesting because this is in the context, McGahn leaving under these somewhat chaotic circumstances. This is in the context of what the Washington Post is reporting this morning, that people close to the president are nervous he's not taking this whole thing seriously enough. And by that, I mean the prospects of Democrats taking over, hearing after hearing, impeachment. We referenced Game of Thrones because the Washington Post did. I'm not sure you're a fan of the show, so I want to give you some context. That's what we do here. This is
Are you going to act out a scene?
This is the context for what Game of Thrones is talking about. Watch this.
Winter is coming.
All right, so now you understand
Now
what
I
this is all
understand
about.
everything. Thank you.
Just to be clear, he doesn't last till season 2. Okay.
Spoiler alert.
There's like 7 seasons. That guy
great.
doesn't last till season 2. So, Jackie, it is interesting, the Post story, that there is this concern that the White House doesn't have its act together for what might be coming.
I mean, this White House isn't filled with what we'd call a bunch of planners, mostly because they have to deal with daily crises that are usually of the president's making. So the fact that the president isn't taking this seriously isn't terribly surprising, and that they also said in the story that he's more focused on the midterm elections, and that's probably wise, because that's what could lead to his undoing should Democrats take the House. They don't want to talk about it, but there is still, behind the scenes, some ruminations about what the next steps would be should Democrats get that power, and they're worried, and they should be worried.
So, Jeff, what do you think that these various Republican leaders are trying to sort of telegraph to the president their concerns about Don McGahn leaving and everything else?
Look, it shows one thing. To Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Don McGahn is a beacon of establishment, of trust, of credibility, someone in the White House who speaks the same language, if you will. That's why there was some sense of alarm at the sense, is this really possible he's leaving? I thought, almost hoping it's not so. But this was not a surprise that Don McGahn is actually going at some point. The question is the timing. And the question is why the president decided to sort of get ahead of this. I also heard yesterday he was also reacting to a news reports that were saying that Don McGahn was leaving. He wants to look like he's in charge of this process. I think more interestingly, though, was the answer from the president yesterday afternoon when he was asked if he knows everything that Don McGahn has said. Don't forget, he has sat down for some 30 hours of questioning with Bob Mueller and his team. So he is the person inside the administration who has talked the most to Bob Mueller. The president was asked if he knows what he said. He said, it doesn't matter. I authorized it. I'm aware that he talked, but he doesn't know specifically what he told him. And that is the point here. So the fact that they are letting go the person who cooperated the most, perhaps, I find very interesting, because from the outside, Don McGahn, certainly is still irrelevant to this, but there's a school of thought. You might want to keep him on the inside as this Mueller investigation keeps going.
Alan Dershowitz was saying that to me last night. It may be safer to keep Dershowitz in the to keep McGahn in the building.
Right, exactly.
Let me play actually what Jeff was just talking about there, the president's statement on that.
Any concern about what he said to the Mueller team?
No, none at all. I knew he was going also, as you know. I had to approve it, so we didn't claim executive. No, I don't have to be aware. We do everything straight. We do everything by the book.
Just right. And when he says, no, I don't have to be aware, he's saying, no, I'm not aware.
But he's also saying, I trust him. I mean,
yes,
he's saying,
absolutely.
I trust him. If you don't have anything to hide, he can say whatever he wants.
Absolutely. He is saying that. But 30 hours of testimony is a lot. And there's another story out this morning, which we talked about, which is the New York Times version of this concern within the White House story, which Errol has Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump as players. And we really haven't seen them since Act 2 of this drama. They've been remarkably quiet over the last few months.
True.
But they apparently were unhappy with Don McGahn, according to the Post, according to the Times, I should say, particularly because of what the president was talking about there, the learning that McGahn talked for some 30 hours, and maybe they had something to do with all this.
Yes, listen, despite what the president said yesterday in response to Jim Acosta, they have a lot of reason to be worried. In those 30 hours, even if it seems like an innocuous conversation took place, what somebody like the White House counsel can do is fill in all kinds of blanks, help make clear who was in what meetings, put the whole timeline in place, help Mueller in ways that the president can't really anticipate and apparently did not learn about. And so they should really be worried that a lot of information has been provided to their adversaries. And despite the talk about doing everything by the book, they haven't done everything by the book, or there wouldn't be an investigation. I mean, the reality is the firing of James Comey and everything that has followed since then has been a problem for this administration. And to the extent that they have a White House counsel who's now cooperating with the investigation, they have cause for concern.
Okay, Jackie, let's talk about what's happening with Attorney General Jeff Sessions. So yesterday we heard Lindsey Graham say basically it can't go on like this, that their relationship had soured with the president, between the president and the Attorney General so badly that something had to give. It couldn't go on like this. He seemed to be suggesting that Jeff Sessions wasn't long for this position, and he seemed to be normalizing it and not kind of explaining the entire can of worms that this would open legally in terms of the Mueller investigation, et cetera. So now we know from Politico a little bit of the backstory of what perhaps prompted all of that. So here it is. Trump raised the prospect of firing Sessions